Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today for the Untangle 101 webinar series. Today, we'll be discussing Untangle's NG Firewall product and how it can help be implemented and protect your network at your school, including all the devices brought on campus, as well as all of the laptops or iPads and stuff that are used for school curriculum. If you're unfamiliar with Untangle and you're in a school environment, then this webinar is perfect for you. My name is Shannon Bonfiglio. I'm part of the marketing team here at Untangle, and I'll be your host today. I have with us our sales engineer, Chad McNaughton, who will be taking us through the presentation and as well as giving us a detailed demonstration of the product. Just a few housekeeping rules before I pass this over to Chad. Please be sure you're selecting the correct audio preference. On the right-hand side, you'll see the option to use your computer speakers or a telephone. If you do choose to use the phone, you will need to use the dial code that's provided. Just a reminder, this webinar is being recorded, so you'll be able to share the recording or re-watch it at your own convenience. An email will be sent within 24 hours after this event has ended for all those who registered. And as always, we have a few staff members on hand to help answer questions throughout the presentation. So please just submit those questions in the Q&A box on the right-hand side, and we'll try and get to those. And as always, if you have any questions or have a very specific question, you can always email us at support@untangle.com or sales@untangle.com. And with that, I will pass it over to Chad.
All right, thanks, Shannon. Thanks for hopping on, everyone. As Shannon said, this is an Untangle 101 series. This is going to be kind of a light touch, a shallow dive, if you will. What we'll go through is basically some data on, cybersecurity for schools. School's just back in session. Untangle is a very, very interesting product on your network, especially in a school scenario. We have a really big discount on our software for public sectors, nonprofits. If you're looking into, new solutions, Untangle is a really, really good thing to check out because we do have lots of deployment options and then lots of also nonprofit public sector pricing discounts. So the basic state of school cybersecurity is honestly a little scary now, in 2018. You can see here, honestly, the financial motive for data breaches has really grown kind of exponentially. You'll see there in my graphic on the right. Espionage is still part of that, getting secrets and things like that. But what we're looking at now is financial records. So that's scary, right? So social media breaches are growing. They're targeting the education industry now because things are becoming more integrated. Dedicated denial service attacks and insider threats are continuing to cause problems for education organizations. And a lot of this can come down to the school's resources, the IT staff. Maybe they're just not staffed for things like this. So it kind of depends. But as you can see, the top industries in social breaches right there, public is very top of the list. Then you can see, as we go down, you'll see financial, professional. Public is going to include everything from city hall to, the high school in your town. You can see here the frequency, the patterns. 292 incidents right there, with confirmed data disclosure in almost half of those. This is getting to be a pretty serious topic to discuss. It has been for a while, obviously, but with the level of data being transferred to and from schools now, it's scary to me to not have something like Untangle on your network. And if you're a bigger school, a public school, you're required to be CIPA compliant, things like that, possibly even HIPAA compliant. So obviously schools are at a disadvantage. Like I said, they often lack resources and expertise. A small little school in rural America likely won't have a dedicated network administrator or a CISO, things like that. So industry regulations and complex solutions make it difficult to implement something on your network. Like I said, maybe the regulations, the compliance standards you're under require something like Untangle to do full deep packet inspection, requires you to have usernames and reporting. We can do all of these things, and like I said, with a lot of different deployment options. Since January 2016, 356 different incidents were reported from public schools and districts, and 14 schools have reported multiple incidents. You can actually see in my graphic there's a couple of dots right there in Colorado, in the middle of the US, and that's where I work. I work just outside of Denver in our Colorado office. One of those dots is a little school district in Boulder, Colorado, that was taken for almost $900,000 over the series of a few months. This was not a breach, this was not a hack, it was a phishing attack. So that actually came down to end users. So there are multiple layers of security that are required in 2018. One of them will always be user education. So let's introduce you to Untangle. What it technically is a comprehensive UTM device. This is a unified threat management server. This is not just a firewall, it's not just a web filter. It's a UTM, it's a basically all-in-one box. So we are focused on small and medium-sized businesses. This is a real quick, easy to deploy, easy to manage solution. The second you drop Untangle on the network, your local network behind us is sealed off to the entire world. So if you need holes punched to or from the outside world, you have to go create a rule to tell us that port should be open. So this is a low-cost subscription-based software solution. This is basically software as a service, firewall as a service, whatever you want to call it. You can save cost by leveraging your existing hardware, or you can choose a turnkey appliance from Untangle. So that's a great option that not a lot of companies in our industry present. So if you have a spare, ProLiant or PowerEdge server sitting in a closet that would match Untangle specifications for your network size, well, install Untangle on that. Or if you do purchase a box from Untangle and you have something similar sitting in a shelf, maybe that's your Untangle spare. You could actually set up high availability and have two devices, something like that. We do offer pretty easy plug and play setup and deployment. Like I said, we can offer basically a turnkey appliance. Once you get a configuration saved, you can then basically push that configuration to other boxes from Untangle's cloud-hosted centralized management. We offer multiple channels of support, everything from our user forums up to our support team here in Colorado, who just keep winning awards for us. And we do offer proactive, actionable alerts, notifications, historical reporting. Untangle's reporting is as good as you can find in this industry, I think. We can keep up to a year of information locally. We can offload reports with Google, with syslog. And there's really no end to the customization, which I'll walk you through. And as I mentioned, we do offer advanced support from our remote team here in Colorado and pretty seamless transparency. Untangle's an inline appliance. We're going to drop right in front of the LAN, whether we're your router or behind your router. It doesn't really matter. It doesn't change our software. So this is a real handy, easy to deploy way to protect and control and monitor the schools and network. So let's talk about some of Untangle's products. We've talked about software a little bit. That would be the Untangle NG Firewall. So this is our software platform to deploy our network-based security and policy apps. The way it would really work is you install Untangle, you buy a box from us with it pre-installed. What you have then is a 2-week free trial of our complete package. If you let that expire without purchasing any paid apps, you revert to the free package. So Untangle's applications are all modular, they're all available a la carte. So the best value is always our complete package. That includes live support, configuration backup. But our apps are a little different. A lot of services like this in our industry use what's called proxy chaining for their apps. And we actually use something different called virtual pipelining. So you can see there under apps, that means that our traffic is inspected simultaneously by every app. So obviously that changes when we see HTTPS, something like that. We have to decrypt first, and then all the apps basically dogpile and inspect it simultaneously. And I mentioned our reports. We do have live custom reports, enable you to drill down on any aspect of traffic. If you're just looking for a specific client or username, you want to see what sites they were going to, what mobile apps they're using. We've actually made that really, really simple to find in Untangle's reporting now, and I'll show you how we do that. So we break our apps down into basic feature categories. So you can see those 6 categories here. This is basically the color scheme we'll see in my server when we jump over there. Any protection apps will be under the red category kind of, and then we go orange and mauve. I'm not really sure. But this is basically every app we make broken down into 2 categories. The add-ons I mentioned, live support, branding manager. This is our complete package. All of this is included, but any paid app at Untangle is also available individually. When I talk about the discounts that we offer for public sector and nonprofit, just an FYI, those discounts are only available on our complete package, which would make a lot more sense for a school to begin with. You wouldn't buy just application control. That wouldn't offer you a whole lot. So the complete package is what we offer those big discounts on, and it gives you everything you see here. So this is our complete package. It's every app we make. This is where we get those discounts for public sector and nonprofit as well. And we'll take a closer look at this on my demo server here in just a second. When we look into Untangle's filtering, we offer a URL database from a vendor that's well north of 500 million URLs categorized. So those are 140 categories in 200 languages. We can force safe search, even if the device has safe search off. So that would require HTTPS inspection of things like Google or Bing. And we can also do policy enforcement for HTTPS and SSL traffic, because we can, like I said, step in, decrypt that as a man in the middle, and then based on a lot of different criteria, shoot them over to different policies, different apps for different levels of filtering. When we talk about application control and bandwidth control, we're talking traffic shaping and mobile apps. So we have over 350 applications to block, flag, or allow. We actually have about 1,900 signatures available in application control. So this is layer 7 application awareness. So we're looking at mobile apps. So this is going to identify all incoming application traffic, regardless of the port it's destined for. So this is a very distinct line in the sand to draw kind of in your mind. When we look at URLs, that's web filter. When we look at mobile application traffic, it's application control. That can cross-pollinate if, for example, I pulled up the Chrome browser on my Android phone. You would see Chrome as a mobile app, but you'd also see the URL I'm going to because I'm in a web browser. So this is going to allow you to optimize bandwidth for things like online assessments, web-based learning, any kind of e-learning sites. We can actually prioritize the traffic to and from those sites and then deprioritize other things like Microsoft updates or unproductive apps. This is going to let us monitor and track bandwidth of users by username, mobile application, protocol they're using, websites they're visiting, et cetera, to help us determine the source of any bandwidth challenges. This will let us see who's chewing up the bandwidth and then take steps to either throttle or block their traffic to dissuade that behavior. Open Wi-Fi is kind of changing things in a lot of industries. Schools, for one, are allowing lots of BYOD and guest Wi-Fi. So being able to monitor that is a huge advantage. So something like Untangle would, let you have visibility and control over those devices connecting to Wi-Fi when they come in through the Untangle captive portal. So you can separate mobile devices into a different policy to give them different filtering, different apps. So we could say, interface is, wireless Wi-Fi, then they come over here. So there's a lot of ways to do that, and we can actually authenticate on the captive portal as well with some of the options you see here. So if your school has Active Directory, that's a huge advantage when you get something like Untangle going, because this will allow you to get usernames and user groups and domains rather than just client IP addresses. We can also do this locally. Untangle also offers a local directory. You see that option in the screenshot there. So if it's a really small environment, maybe a small lab or a small, little annex building at a school, we could always set up local usernames and passwords as well. Or if you just want to do that for guests, etc., we do have that option. Untangle will help a lot with your device management as well. This will allow you to tag hosts, devices, users to specific student or teacher racks. The Untangle tagging system is really interesting because you can automate tags. If you wanted to, you could say everyone coming in on this interface gets tagged as Wi-Fi. We can use that tag as a label to push them through policy, to do bandwidth control, a lot of different things. But with Policy Manager here, we can create unique granular policies for students, teachers, admins, individual classrooms, offices, etc. There's a lot of ways to do that, which I'll show you guys on my demo server in just a minute. So I mentioned a lot of deployment options earlier. How would I actually do that? Untangle is technically a hybrid cloud product. This is a cloud managed on-premise gateway powered by Cloud Intelligence, although now we can also be installed in the public cloud in Amazon Web Services. So there are a lot of ways to do this, right? So whether it's Untangle's appliance or your, third-party appliance, your spare appliance, You can also virtualize this with our OVA file for VMware, ESXi. If you use a different hypervisor, you can use our ISO file, which will still work, but we don't support the hypervisor at that point. We only support VMware. And then the public cloud, as I mentioned, Amazon Web Services, we'll look into things like Azure and Google Cloud at some point, but this is a new option. So the public cloud in Amazon is a very interesting thing. You'll see that my demo server is actually hosted in the Amazon cloud when we get there. I mentioned the virtual pipelining when we were talking about applications. We don't do proxy chaining, so it's not as long of an assembly line between apps for a packet to pass through. So it's just a little quicker process. And then we do have a lighter hardware footprint. As I said, we can be run on small, cheap hardware, whether it's yours or ours. This is Linux Debian. So it's a pretty minimal OS as far as resources go. It's still Linux though, so it's going to eat all the memory you feed it. Don't be concerned if you see high memory usage right out of the gate. That's a pretty normal thing for a Linux server. So we mentioned the cloud a couple of times. Our actual cloud infrastructure has a few different functions. So I mentioned command center, so we do have centralized management hosted in our cloud. We also do basic threat intelligence. So Scout IQ is our cloud-based threat intelligence platform that aggregates telemetry data. So any Untangle around the world that connects to the cloud and Scout IQ will be able to share like zero-day telemetry data for malware and things like that. It uploads that into Scout IQ, where it's then analyzed and disseminated to the other Untangles that have opted in. So this is never something we do by default. We don't connect you to the cloud by default. You opt into this during the install wizard. This is a really handy tool, and it's just part of both of our virus blockers. It's included at no additional cost. It's to me, it's another prong in the 20-pronged approach to attacking viruses and malware. So as I said before, there's no single approach. It's always going to be a multi-layered security approach going forward nowadays. Scout IQ is an interesting layer in that. So I did mention Command Center. If you're trialing Untangle, this will be available for you to play around with. This is our cloud-based centralized management. So this is where you can see your appliances, assign your subscriptions, create policies, sync them to different boxes. And we also have a new feature called keep in sync, basically. So any new devices you register here, we're going to keep everything synced. Any license changes you make, configuration changes, that kind of stuff. So this is where you can manage multi-site deployments without additional hardware. It's just all basically managed here in our cloud. So there's alerts, threat history, audit logs for anyone logging into a server. And as I said, you can manage licensing updates, backups, a lot of interesting stuff. So cloning, editing, and pushing policies across your fleet is kind of the new toy. And we're able to create a master template configuration. We can create a policy template now and say, I need all these schools to have this school template that I made. So it's a really handy thing. It's going to reduce costs. You no longer have to drive out to that little remote school an hour away. So Command Center is a very handy tool. Your first 5 eligible servers will appear here for free. After that, there's a pricing structure that your sales reps can go through with you. But this has become a very valuable tool in Untangle's product offering. As I mentioned, we do offer a line of appliances. The X series on the left there, we basically offer to Soho, small office, home offices. I actually use that U50XW there on the bottom at my house, and it kind of rocks. It's rated for up to 50 devices. It's got 4 network adapters and built-in Wi-Fi. You can see on the far right, we go all the way up to more or less corporate, large school campus. Our device's nomenclature is based on licensing. So Untangle's licensing is based on unique concurrent IPs. So when you drop us on your network, everything behind us becomes an active host. So these names, model names, are basically rated, are basically tied to that rating. I'm sorry. So a U500 is rated for about 500 devices to filter. A U25 about 25 devices. This always depends on the options you enable, the apps that are installed, etc. But that's how they're named. So you can see we go all the way up to 3,000 or so devices, in a 2U rack mount server. These are great little boxes. So if you're not a hardware person, if you don't want to build your own and maintain it, if you don't have a spare server, Untangle does have hardware options for you if that's the route you need to take. So let's jump over to my demo server here real quick. This is our actual demo server, demo.untangle.com. And it, as I said, is running in Amazon Web Services. So that's a new thing for us. If you go to untangle.com and you go under public cloud, you'll see our options there, all the information you can read on Amazon Web. When you log into Untangle, unless you have a different page bookmarked, it almost always throws you on your dashboard here. So this is reporting data being presented at a maximum of 24 hours. So we're seeing up to 24 hours here on the widgets. As I said, Untangle's reporting can keep up to a year. However, these max out at 24 hours. So we do 10 or 12 by default, you know, popular reports, top mobile apps by size, top host names using my bandwidth. But this is all customizable. Perhaps you have Active Directory and you don't want to look at host name reports that only show IPs. You can come disable these or delete them. And then you can come to the widgets dropdown and create a new widget. Maybe you want to see the widgets that have usernames. These are all the widgets that offer usernames. So this would be top usernames by total bytes. These would be the usernames chewing up the most of my bandwidth. So if I want to, I can grab that and throw it on my dashboard. Well, you'll see my demo server doesn't have a username. So I'm going to change this. I'm going to go look for the, let's look for the top sites by request. So Web Filter will show me the top sites by request. These are the websites being visited the most. So if I want to add that to my dashboard, it'll put it down at the bottom here, unless I decide to reorder it, which I can. The widget itself has some options as well. You can change the size of the widgets, the refresh intervals. You can download an image of the widget, or you can click right here to open in reports. So that's going to take you to the full report that widget is pulling data from. These conditions up here are what I was mentioning earlier with our new drill down options. So this is Untangle version 14. Even in Untangle version 13.2, this was a lot more complicated because we had to go in and edit a report to add a username field and save that. And then it would be there, but it was a little bit steeper learning curve. Now I can just come in and say, I want to see this username. I want to see this client IP. And it will instantly change all this data to only show that condition. So you can add multiple conditions here on the dashboard. If you put a condition on a widget, it's not going to carry over if you click reports right here, but it will carry over if you click through in open reports. So I'm not going to do that right now. I'm just going to click on our reports viewer because I want to show you guys that by default, when you install our complete package, you get about 400 reports. So this is every app we make. You can see we go in with reports even on administrative logins and changes that were saved. So if you come in on a Monday and things are different, you can actually check the reporting to see if someone logged in and changed any settings. So I'm going to go back once again to my little search box and do top sites. So we'll go back to that same report, top sites by request. This is a very common report for someone to want to see. I want to see the websites being visited we're looking at today. So this is where we can change the time range on the actual report if we're keeping enough data. As I said, Untangle can keep up to a year locally. We change that through our reports app out in the applications. So this is where we can do our time range if we need to. This specific report here, URL filtering, will always generate a big ugly chunk of gray like this called others. So I tend to click on the legend over here to eliminate that. Basically anything that's not relevant to my report. I'm eliminating Google domains right now. We're a G Suite domain, so these are not relevant really to me. So as you can see, I have some sort of a Craigslist problem. I'm not sure why. Someone in San Jose is looking for something on Craigslist. That's fine. Maybe they're selling something. This thing is completely customizable. As I said, if we wanted to change this report and save it as a new one, we can come in and add conditions, remove conditions, however we like to do it. We can also, however, create a new report from scratch now. So this is kind of a new option as well. Untangle also offers a real-time session viewer. When you have usernames leveraged, this is a really handy thing because it throws usernames right here. If I want to narrow this down to a specific username or a specific IP or a specific host, we just punch that into the filter and it instantly changes that. So this is basically the real-time view of your traffic. This is Untangle, however, it's doing deep packet inspection, which means this is never actually real time. It's usually delayed, 10, 20 seconds, something like that. This is a very handy peek into certain aspects of your traffic though. For example, on our dashboard, we have geolocation here. So if you see dots from parts of the world that you don't want to communicate with, you can actually click that dot and it will take you to the session viewer and narrow down to just that country. And you can kind of get a better idea of what they're doing. Oh, I missed it, too late. So that's kind of the reports and the dashboard. We do have lots of documentation and separate webinars and things like that on our YouTube. Untangle's reporting is as customizable as I can find in our industry, and it does so much that I almost feel it can be intimidating. But out of the box, it does a lot of really, really valuable stuff, and you don't likely need to do a ton of customization rather than other services where you need to go in and build a lot of those reports to just show specific pieces of information. So that being said, let's focus a little bit here on the applications. So we've talked a lot about web filter and bandwidth control, application control. What you're looking at here on my screen is the complete package all installed. We actually have a couple of redundant apps installed. You'll see the warnings I'm getting up here because Web Monitor and Spam Blocker Lite are installed, even though their full versions are here. So I don't need those. I also don't need Application Control Lite. I don't need Virus Blocker Lite. So as I said, this could be a really modular thing. If you're a school and you're looking to filter the web, get usernames, always the complete package is the best value, and that's where our discounts apply. So one of the first things you would likely want to look into would be connecting something like Active Directory. This is where we can do that. We would just come in and set up the Active Directory connection. We basically get your information punched in. All we need is the IP, the domain, and the admin. You saw I don't have an Active Directory, so I get a fail test. All we need, though, is just the information. We'll need the admin login. And then what we'll do is install the Untangle user notification API on your domain controller. Nobody by default has to sign into Untangle. They don't know we're there unless you tell them we're there with a captive portal login page. We can tie that to Active Directory if we need to, but in general, people will sign into their Windows workstations. Active Directory says, hey, Untangle, here's Jerry Smith's username, here's his IP. So that's how we get usernames from Active Directory. It's a similar thing with Radius or with OAuth, the Google option here. So if you need that, it's available here under Directory Connector. Once that's done, we could then actually make policies based on usernames or groups. There's a lot of different ways to do this. So I talked a little bit in the slide deck about policies. And what we're looking at here are the actual policies created on this server. So we have our default policy, but we also have a teacher policy, which is inheriting from above, and a student policy, which is also inheriting. The way that actually looks is on my default, I have everything installed, everything up and running. But when I go over here to teacher, you can see that they're physically grayed out and we can't interact with them, except web filter. So they needed some different web filter rules than default. So all we have to do to customize this for the policy is go install the app for them. So that's what we've done with web filter there. So we can do that for each policy. You can see when we get down to the administrator policy, it starts over and it doesn't inherit any rules because basically admins don't want any rules. You can see we don't have any web filtering, we don't have any, throttling or application management, just firewall rules. So creating a policy, all you're really doing is creating a set of apps. You're giving it a name and a description, and you're letting it inherit from another policy if you want to, or you can say none, like we do with administrators. What you've done here is just create a set of apps. You have to create a rule to actually send someone into those policies. So on my demo server here, where we don't save changes, I technically don't have a policy rule saved. So the only policy over here that's actually doing anything is default. So what I could do is I could come over here and say policy rule for teachers. As you can see, there are a lot of different ways to push people through policies. So I could do source address is, interface is, I could tag people's devices. Ideally, I would want to do usernames or groups from Active Directory, but I could also do time of day, day of week. Maybe if it's a student group, maybe during lunch times on Thursdays and Fridays, they get Twitter less throttled or something to that effect. So there's a lot of options here, even down to MAC address and MAC vendors. I could say all the Samsung devices go over here, all the Apple devices go over here. So there's a lot of ways to do this. I would technically, for this one, want to do user in group from Active Directory. So we'll pretend for a second that I have a group called teachers. So you would see your drop down of all your groups right there. So I'm just going to type in teachers just to show you how this would look. This is where we choose the target policy. So with this rule enacted, there's no way for someone authenticating against their username to get around these apps. So even if they're coming in on Wi-Fi and they have to authenticate, that's fine. We're seeing their username from a group. So the group itself is what we're pushing through that policy. I also wanted to touch lightly on our reports app here since I mentioned it a few times. This is where you come in and see all the reports. You can access them from the little arrows right over there. It'll show you basically their display order, the units that they're set up in. The next tab over is where we set our data retention though. If you need to keep a month, you can do that. Like I said, you can keep up to 1 year though. So that's obviously going to fill up a hard drive at some point. So if you have a big enough storage capacity, obviously you can keep a ton of information. But this would almost always, we would almost always recommend offloading something like that with syslog events specifically. The other thing I wanted to touch on were email templates. Untangle offers that reports user tab you see next to this, where we can actually set up accounts for non-admin users. This is for a counselor, a teacher, a principal, someone who wants to see information but is not an administrator. We would actually set up a template report for them. So if I wanted to say template for teachers, they would like to see probably mobile apps used, bandwidth consumers, and websites visited maybe. So they can get this daily, weekly, or monthly. We can make it mobile friendly too to kind of reduce the graphics on the charts. So teachers will not care at all about memory usage on my server, right? So we're going to eliminate these. What they do care about, however, are top applications. They care about bandwidth consumers. So we'll see bandwidth usage. And then they care about websites visited. So I can eliminate everything all the way down to web filter. And it may seem like we're doing this a little backwards, but remember what we were looking at earlier, there are 400 reports to pull from. So we only had to eliminate 30 or 40 here. So I'm gonna get rid of web monitor, and then I'll come over here and I'll actually go down to web filter and I'll say, well, I actually want to see the top sites by request, top domains by request. So anything that you've seen in reporting, we can just throw in here in their summary. So I'm just gonna do, I should do top domains by request. And then I say done. And now we can give that template to non-admin users. I could come over here and create the user. Well, I'm going to make this up. If they want alerts, they can get alerts, but really they'll generally just probably want the report. Then we just come over here and we choose that template for them. And that's it. So that's a really handy thing. You no longer have to go through and cobble together reports like that. And I actually have a few summary templates saved. If you need them, you can hit us up at presales@untangle.com. I can send you something like an executive summary report. It's just a JSON file that you would come over here and actually import into your templates and then just append or prepend those. So that's a handy thing. It shows almost exactly what I was just talking about. A couple other things I want to touch on here before we start wrapping up and get into some Q&A. I mentioned our web filter app, and it does have a categories list of about 500, 600 million URLs. These come from a vendor out here in Denver called Zavello, and this is a cloud-hosted database of URLs. That's important because this is not a list of signatures or websites installed on your server locally. You'll never have to maintain this. It's not something you have to prune or keep up. Zavello does that for us. So if you're curious, you can come do a look up here. Hopefully Twitter shows up as social networking. All right. If you think that's wrong, you can suggest a different category to Zavello. You can say, I went to Twitter and I thought it was a sport fighting website. You hit suggest. You'll notice it says suggest and not submit. You do not get to change these categories. Zavello will do this if necessary. In that specific request, I would send this request in and they would send me a very polite email back saying, hi, Chad, we got your request. You're crazy. Twitter is social networking. It's not sport fighting. So they would leave that. Another quick little pro tip is a URL can be in up to 3 unique categories. So ESPN is one of those. News, sports, and streaming video. So someone may come to you and say, hey, Premier League just started, NBA is about to start up. I was going to look at scores. Are we blocking sports? And you would say, no, we're not. Oh, we're blocking streaming video. You don't want to unblock that. So this is a good case for just a whitelist entry. This is how I do a pass site when I whitelist something. Basic syntax matching. So this is your whitelist. This is your blacklist. They both work the exact same with that syntax matching. You can see we do some blocking out of the gate. You'll see some boxes checked for things like anonymizer sites, proxies, malware, pornography, things like that. The Pass Clients tab will let you pass an IP around the web filter, like Jerry Smith here didn't want to be filtered on the web, so we put his IP into a pass rule. I, however, don't use that much anymore. I don't care for it because I have now removed Jerry from protection against malware, phishing, online ads, etc. So I would prefer to use the rules tab for Jerry because I could come in here and I could say the same exact thing and be way more specific. So I could still say source address is, put in his IP, but I could even come down and put in his username and then say, well, he only needs access to these 2 or 3 websites. He doesn't need to be completely bypassed. So I'll throw those sites in, or maybe just an entire web filter category, or maybe an application on his tablet or phone needs to be unlocked. I can do all of that stuff right here from web filter. This is a pass or block. So that's an interesting option too. Keep in mind, we like to create policies for different groups, but we don't always have to. And then another important option in web filter is being able to block traffic by SNI. So this server name indication, this is kind of a host name block. So for things like HTTPS sites, when we're not decrypting HTTPS on a certain device for some reason, we could block that traffic with SNI. We would, however, lose visibility into traffic that wasn't blocked on HTTPS. So you would never see beyond the host name. That's why decrypting HTTPS is so valuable, because you get URI information in addition to a URL. That decryption also enables us to enforce safe searching. This works really, really well on every search engine I've ever tried. That includes things like IXQuick, which is a big search engine in Europe. We block Google's Quick protocol by default. We can also restrict Google apps, and our reports are available from pretty much anywhere in Untangle. Some of the other apps that we kind of touched on that I wanted to just briefly show you would be bandwidth control. This is where we do layer 7 traffic shaping. This one actually offers a setup wizard. So you can come through and say, this is my WAN speed up and down. This is my configuration. I'm a school, I'm a university. So it actually offers templates. When you choose school, like we did on our demo server, you get about 25 rules. So this one actually did 27 here. And you can see halfway down or so, we start deprioritizing unproductive mobile apps. We start deprioritizing Windows updates. If you're using BitTorrent on your phone or tablet, we're going to tag you, and then we can send you somewhere else based on that tag. So this is basic traffic shaping. If I wanted to, I could say username is poor Jerry Smith, and I'm just going to throttle him. Whenever he's logged in, everything he does gets throttled. So there's a lot of ways to do this. What we're doing is traffic shaping. This is not blocking or passing. But sometimes blocking traffic isn't necessary. So a lot of this can come down to your school's IT usage policy, acceptable usage policy. If you don't want to block content, you can still dissuade people from wanting to use it by throttling it, tar pitting it, anything like that, basically to make it no fun to use. So Untangle doesn't always have to be fully heavy-handed, big brother on the network. You can always just kind of take steps to dissuade certain types of behavior through throttling and tar pitting as well. One thing I also like to show off, Untangle only has 2 installation modes. Untangle will either be installed in router mode as your true gateway device, or will be installed in bridge mode behind your router firewall. The interesting thing is in bridge mode, we can actually be a second firewall, even a third firewall. So you'll notice that our firewall is an application here, which means it sits at layer 7 of the network stack. This thing sees a lot more conditions than a layer 3 firewall would. Even our layer 3 firewall rules are limited to interface, port, IPs, protocol, things like that. The firewall app, however, can see some interesting things. Poor Jerry Smith here, I'm picking on him all day. I'm just going to block him when he logs in. So I could just come in and block him. Another interesting thing we could do, let's say I want to block all the hackers in France. I don't know. That's a random choice. I would say client country is France, block, and flag, and that's done now. So if I want that to catch first, I'll drag that to the top of my firewall order, and now I'm blocking any client IP that geolocates to that country. So it's a really easy thing to do on Untangle. Maybe sometimes when there's a firewall in front of us that's a few years old and doesn't do geolocation kind of the same way, or like as simply as we do, I guess. The very last thing I want to touch on in our apps here is the captive portal. I did mention this a couple of times as able to send out a root certificate. This is where we can get login information, for wireless users. If we need to stand this up in front of your Wi-Fi, in front of local users, we can do pretty much anything with our capture rules. But what it will actually do is stand up a portal page for people to agree to your terms or to sign in if they need to. So if you wanted to do authentication, we can do that here a number of different ways. And the page itself will let you log in, will let you track by cookies, we'll see MAC addresses, all that stuff. So if you want to hit preview right here, that's just what it's going to look like if I'm not asking for logins. I didn't hit save there. Obviously, we're just doing a basic message. So that's what it kind of looks like. Just agree to our terms. Please be nice on the internet. So you can brand that with your own school's logos and all that kind of stuff if you need to. You can actually upload a custom page here if you want to. So this is the Untangle Complete package. I would encourage everyone to jump on our demo server, demo.untangle.com, and play around as much as you like. As Shannon mentioned, if you have any questions, please get in touch with us at support@untangle.com, sales@untangle.com, or pre-sales@untangle.com, and we'd be happy to answer any of those questions. Let's jump back out to my slide deck here for just 1 second. We'll get some Q&A going here. So I mentioned some of these differentiators throughout the presentation. I think you've seen them in action, kind of. It is really easy to deploy and for a school to set up. We do have enterprise level security with kind of consumer level simplicity. So I mentioned this is Untangle 14.0. We're running Linux, Debian, Stretch now. When I say Linux server, people picture a command line interface, but that's not Untangle. You don't have to deal with a command line if you don't want to. It's available to you. But this is all completely graphical user interfaces. As you see, it's browser-based, fully responsive. It runs a basic version of Chromium on the device itself. And as I said, right out of the box, we do have default settings. That's kind of a baseline. So you can just get all those boxes checked out of the gate and then kind of go tweak from there. And it is flexible and cost competitive, especially in the education sector, because we do have such drastic discounts. So our public sector discounts are between 40 and 50% off the software packages. And as I said, up to 5 eligible servers, your command center for cloud-based centralized management will be included at no additional charge. If you do get beyond 5 servers, obviously you'll want to talk to your sales rep about Command Center and see what kind of pricing we have on it. But that's a really interesting option. Up to 5 servers, we don't even charge you for it. And Untangle, if you're new to us, we are not a startup. We're not a new company. This is Untangle's 15th year in existence. You can see we're starting to win a lot of awards. Over there on the right, our customer service team keeps winning awards for us. They actually won a gold American Business Award from the Stevie Awards. So winning gold awards for customer service and technical support, and the fact that we're still a small business supporting small to medium businesses, these things are important to me in this industry because it sets us apart, and I think it gives us a very different feel as a vendor in network security. We do have really active communities as well. I'm kind of our de facto community manager for things like Spiceworks. We also offer our community forums where, the basic Untangle Linux community is DIY or die, and they'll help you with any question you have. So please don't feel shy or intimidated about posting on our user forums. This is not like posting something to Reddit or something like that where you instantly get flamed or made fun of. Untangle's community is very helpful. The community forums are actually trolled pretty regularly by our founder and his engineering team, our QA engineers, me and the other sales engineer, and our support techs. So 9 times out of 10, the answer you get on the forums is actually from an Untangle engineer or technician anyway, which is a really, really interesting thing. And just some quick quotes here. There's a lot of case studies on our site. Lots of different schools, different size schools, different geographically based schools. We're kind of all over the world now, but we do have a lot of schools here in the States. And as you can see, there's some international as well. So if you're curious, there's some case studies on our YouTube, and there's a lot more information like this, testimonials on our website. And let's check with Shannon, see if we have any questions hanging out there that haven't gotten answered yet. Shannon, anything we could get to?
Yeah, thanks, Chad. I know some people are asking some good technical questions, so I won't ask those. I think those are getting answered. But there was some questions about, you mentioned the demo, but some people are asking if they can test us out at all. So I wanted to mention the trial.
Sure, yeah, let me jump back over to our site real quick. I'll show where that is. Basically, if you go to untangle.com, there's a big download link up at the top. If you have a virtual machine, if you have a spare piece of hardware, if you have a PC sitting around with a second network adapter, you can download Untangle and trial it for 2 full weeks. Default is 14 days. If you need an extension on that, just get with your sales rep or with pre-sales. We'll see what we can do. I always encourage folks to trial this. This is a really big piece of software. Even for 45 minutes here, this is a really big dose of information, and we've really just kind of dipped a toe in the shallow end. So I always encourage folks to trial this and really kick the tires. On our download page here, if you're not sure exactly what you need to download, we do have a lot of articles over here. If you're not sure how to create a bootable USB, for example, our support team has an article on how to do that, whether you're on Windows or Mac. So we have a lot of resources like that, but yeah, always, if you can, go to untangle.com, download, and start playing.
Great. There was a couple question or two about SIPA compliance and E-rate. So because this is a school webinar, I kind of want to make sure we cover that.
Yeah. SIPA compliance is obviously a big conversation. E-rate is a little easier. I'm not a member of our sales staff, so I'm not 100% versed in E-rate. We do work with E-rate. You can get a lot of your Untangle covered through E-rate. Definitely talk to your sales rep about that. Email us at sales@untangle.com. SIPA compliance is a whole other thing. Obviously, some of the big aspects of SIPA compliance are seeing usernames and reports and decrypting HTTPS. So we do both of those things. We're in a lot of schools. If you go to Untangle's site and you search Untangle SIPA, you'll get a lot of articles. This will show basically forum posts, articles we've written, anything on our wiki. SIPA compliance in less than 700 words. Well, all puns intended. Untangling SIPA compliance is pretty hairy sometimes. So by all means, let us help. Call us, contact us at sales or support or pre-sales at untangle.com, and we can chat about it. But in my experience, it usually almost always comes down to, being able to filter students separately, being able to see usernames, being able to inspect HTTPS or decrypt HTTPS, I'm sorry. So we're capable of doing all these things. We're part of your SIPA compliance when we're on the network. If you have any real detailed questions like that, obviously you can search the site or just hit us up. I'm happy to hop on calls, demos, things like that if anybody needs it. Yeah, by all means, please reach out. But we're very aware and we're a very big part of your SIPA compliance.
Thanks, Chad. There were some questions. I do want to show the wiki if you can, just hop over there. Chad mentioned, we have our forums, which is our online community, but we also have the wiki, which is our technical documentation. So everything from installation user guide to hardware requirements, which I know was a question that was just asked. So if you want to use your own hardware, we do have some recommendations to make sure it'll work correctly. As well as how to run it as VM, etc. So the wiki is a really great tool for technical documentation, and the forums is more for if you want to ask either our engineers or other users of Untangle how to kind of get around a problem. Or as always, you can contact us at support. But those are kind of ways if you don't want to call us.
Yeah, and I did that kind of fast. I'm sorry. If you go to wiki.untangle.com. and you scroll down, hardware requirements is down here under the hardware section. And what I wanted to say, my little caveat here, is these are kind of our baseline stats. So if you can get this minimum spec, yeah, you could filter up to 50 devices. Again, this is Linux Debian, even up to 5,000 devices, we're looking for, quad core and 4 gigs of RAM minimum. These are not supercomputers. So yeah, this is actually relevant for a virtual or a physical server. So, it's Linux, the more resources, the better, but this is kind of the bare minimums here.
Great, I think that's about it.
Okay.
There was a question on how to create policies. Let's see, I need to create a group first and apply a policy, correct, for student and teacher?
Well, the group is what you would create like in Active Directory, if that's what you mean. Basically, with the policy, it's all done at once. So if I wanted to create a new policy, I just come over here and I just create it, whatever it is, save it, and then I come over and I make the rule to send them into that policy. So if you're going to do this by group from Active Directory, yeah, that group, Active Directory, would obviously have to be created first so we could leverage that.
Okay, I think that answered his question, hopefully.
And if you go make that on the fly after we're already connected to your Active Directory, all you have to do is come into Directory Connector and click Refresh Group Cache, and that will let the new group show up. Great, sometimes it takes like a minute sometimes if you're in a hurry.
Okay, so I think that's about it. If you want to continue, I know we're getting close on time, so. Okay, so this is my slide. So thanks, Chad, for the great demo. Again, if you have questions, please submit them in the Q&A box. We still have a few minutes. I do want to mention some promotions we have going on. We have a trade-in, trade-up program. So if you're not an Untangle customer, or you are an Untangle customer and you have an older appliance or you have a competitor's appliance, we do offer some special pricing if you are looking to upgrade in terms of, you have an older subscription or an older appliance and you need to upgrade because your school grew or company grew, whatever the case, or you have a competitor's product and you're looking at us to kind of change up your network settings and come over to Untangle. We do offer some trade-in, trade-up programs, special pricing for that. And we know we have a ton of home users and we love our home users, but if you do end up bringing us to work to be implemented at your work, please be sure to contact us so you can make sure to get that special pricing as well. We do offer some discounts on that as well. And Chad did mention that we do have the pricing, special pricing for nonprofit and public sectors. I don't have a slide for this, but if you go on our website, you can see the pricing. It is the same package as NG Firewall Complete, just at a discounted price. So whether you're a nonprofit organization, a private school, public school, same with government, if there are any government users on this webinar, we do offer that for public sectors, public schools, and stuff like that. So yeah, if you go all the way down, Chad, I believe. There we go, right there. So we have public sector complete, nonprofit complete. It's the same exact package, just at a discounted price because we know that everyone has strict budgets when it comes to whether you're private or public school. So keep that in mind if you're considering us. And I think that's about it. I think that was the last slide. Please feel free to contact us. Like we said, we're here to help out in any way we can, whether it be support or sales. We appreciate your time, and we hope to see you again next time. Thanks, Chad.